Will he live up to the hype? Now that's a question we hear all the time. Every year, there's that big name or two that really catches your eye. And once they finally get a chance to play in the Overwatch League, the internet goes wild. There's non-stop talk about how Person A is going to be the best at their position, or how Person B is going to take over the league. And we've already explored what this looks like on the wrong side of things. But what happens when the hype is actually warranted? Time to take a look back at the best examples of young players cashing in on enormous expectations. Here's a bunch of honorable mentions before we get started. Shout out to Hanbin, Chio, Edison, Hoxel, Shy, Shu, Twilight, Violet, and quite a few more that I'm just not thinking about as of this recording. These individuals all more than lived up to expectations, but sadly, they didn't make the cut. And if they didn't, it's mostly because their exposure maybe isn't as big as the rest of these guys. But who did make the cut exactly? Well, starting off at number 10 is Prophet. We'll start off nice and easy here. This man was coming off a championship and MVP performance in Apex right before OWL Season 1. On his first professional team, in his first ever true professional event, he showed off some insane flexibility. And when he was announced to be a part of the 2018 London Spitfire, it really came as no surprise that he got a ton of hype amongst any of the players on that team. He shared the spotlight with some big names, and yet he still got a lot of praise as a potential star, and for some people, a sleeper MVP. There was an expectation to continue down his path to glory. You've got to carry that momentum just knowing what you were able to accomplish mere months before the league. And within a couple of weeks, Prophet was already cashing in, much to what his name would suggest, becoming a pivotal starter in helping the Spitfire win the Stage 1 championship, and of course later on that season, the Grand Finals. And just like he did in Apex, he did so in brilliant fashion, taking home the Finals MVP, picking up a new hero along the way, and absolutely dominating the competition. So within a year of winning Apex, which was already a pretty prestigious tournament, this guy elevated himself even higher and arguably became the best player in the league. Just the inaugural season alone is enough to suggest that this guy lived up to the hype. And while he's never quite captured the same glory since, his longevity has helped out a lot and has also been a reason that he's lived up to the hype. He's won tournaments, he's made finals, he's won awards, he's the all-time kill leader, and he's outlasted nearly every player to ever grace the league. And in a way, you could argue that he had two different successful careers. People thought that he'd be special when he flexed his talent in Apex, and it's safe to say that through an amazing 6-year career that he certainly has. Number 9. Kevster. A lot of people forget the buzz of Kevster around the time LA Gladiators signed him in late 2020. The amount of comments saying that this guy was OWL caliber was actually crazy. Back when he was pounding NA contenders, it's all people ever brought up, especially the contenders maniacs. If you know, then you know. People were advocating for this guy to be in the league for months before it happened, and when it finally came true, Kevster fans took the hype to another level, saying things like Birdring and Kevster were gonna roll everyone, and this is the kind of pickup that could elevate the Gladiators. And he almost immediately showed us why the Gladiators brought him in and decided to build their team around him for years to come. By the end of 2020, he gained people's respect with some pretty impressive moments, and not much after, he was most definitely the best player on their team. The last 2.5 years speak for itself. In his time of being on the Gladiators, he's gotten 2 Roll Stars, an MVP nomination, he was a top player in the game, and a main reason why the Gladiators helped take home 3 different regular season tournaments. Kevster was a major contributor to the Glads over the years, and is basically the big reason why they were able to finally break through and not be a totally unsuccessful franchise. And on top of it, he's built himself a Hall of Fame resume for sure. All the Redditors and Contenders fans said that he'd be big time, and this is what he had to show for it. Number 8. Guxue. This guy got universal recognition, both from the East and the Western fan bases. Guxue was facing worldwide fame and high expectations 3 months before he even stepped foot in the Blizzard arena. And it's all thanks to the 2018 Overwatch World Cup, where he quickly became famous for his Primal Rage mechanics, even harboring the nickname Primal Blade. He was the real deal, a true carry at the tank position. This guy was expected to be a top player in the game right off the bat. I'm talking one of the gods of Winston. And on a mixed roster with all the odds stacked against him, Gushue became that guy. The things that he was doing on Winston were insane, even in a GOAT setup where Reinhardt was the superior pick. There's countless times of him just breaking out that Winston over the Rhine and absolutely putting scrubs in their place. And by the time 2019 ended, Gushue won a Role Star, was in the MVP conversation, and helped lead the Spark to a top 4 finish in the playoffs plus regular season standings. So yeah, off the back of an event that put him on the map, he did all of that in his first year. This dude was largely considered one of the best non-Korean players in the game. So just in his first year, he was able to warrant a lot of hype, and I'd say that after that, he did kind of pick and choose his points of relevance, but you could always appreciate that he showed up when it mattered. We saw countless big games in his rookie year, and in 2022, yet again, where the Spark were able to finish top 4 in the playoffs out of nowhere. He just consistently found ways to make his big primal juggles happen, or create a lot of space while keeping his death rate to a minimum. On a team that's never been the favorites to win, with average level support play, Gushue's had one of the longest, most successful careers in the history of Overwatch. All things considered, that's pretty solid. Number 7. Pelican. Pelican's career has been super successful since the moment that he stepped into the league, and while he wasn't the #1 favorite to win the 2021 Rookie of the Year, he still drew a lot of praise as an upcoming star out of O2 Blast. The skill he exemplified on multiple heroes made him a home run pickup for the Atlanta Reign in 2021. People thought he was going to be amazing and the next heir to the O2 Blast Prodigy Club, and he most certainly lived up to that name. But I don't know if anybody expected what we'd end up getting, at least in that first year. The impact didn't just meet said expectations, they exceeded them. Pelican was a talented rookie, but Flex DPS was a rather stacked position. The idea of him immediately being top tier seemed a little far-fetched, but that's kind of what we ended up getting for mostly his entire career. Just in his rookie year alone, he shouldered much of the burden to elevate the Reign from pretender to contender. As a rookie, competing against the likes of Sparkle, Kevster, and others in their primes, Pelican was one of the most impactful players in the league. And he did so by demonstrating one of the most diverse hero pools. His Mei was the best in the league and was a big force in the Reign's rush comp. His Echo was arguably the best. He could Doomfist, he could Tracer, he could Hanzo, he could play Torb for the anti-dive. And for his efforts, he took home Rookie of the Year in a landslide effort. He got an MVP nomination on top of it, and took the Reign to 3 tournaments and a grand finals. He did all of this just as a rookie on a team chock full of Western players where he, in a way, was the odd one out. He got taken right out of his comfort zone and was asked to shoulder a lot of the load, arguably more than he ever has, and his response was excellent. I mean, the Reign completely centered their game plan around him, and he didn't even bat an eye. To this day, Pelican's rookie performance is one of the best examples of raising a team's ceiling that we've ever seen. And then, just to show it's not some kind of fluke, he goes over to Houston the following year, and they get top 3 in playoffs. Once again, him as the primary playmaker. We'll see what happens later this year, but as of right now, that's the worst a Pelican-led team has ever done. He's been one of the best at his craft since he joined the league. Pelican truly did the long line of high-potential Korean Flex DPS proud with one of the better careers we've had the pleasure of watching up until this point, and there's still a chance for him to make it even greater here in 2023. Number 6. Sinatraa. Okay, I know he's a rather controversial figure within this community, and many of us would prefer to forget he exists, but a list wouldn't be complete without him if we're strictly going off of history. 'Cause people hate him though, we'll make this as quick as possible. So coming into the league, Sinatraa was seen as a teenage prodigy. He gained quite the fan base from his streams, as well as the 2017 World Cup, and when the Overwatch League was announced, it was not very surprising to see a serious bidding war break out for him. Reports supposedly state that bids got to about 150k, and needless to say, That's a lot of money for a 17-year-old kid, and it goes to show the high expectations that were being placed on him. And I'd say, at least for a little bit, he certainly lived up to said expectations, as in a primarily GOATS-heavy league, he elevated himself to the best Zarya in the game, and ended up winning MVP that year, and helped the Shock later go on to win the Grand Finals as a good Doomfist player as well. He excelled so much in 2019, he just did so much in that one year that this alone kind of justified the hype around him and the big paycheck, and while his career would die soon after, I'd say that he definitely reached the high ceiling that Shock fans were hoping for, so love or hate the guy, he definitely did perform under some pretty heavy pressure. Landing at the 5 spot is Fleta. I mean, Fleta's the meta, right? Everybody was super pumped to see him go from Flash Lux to the Seoul Dynasty, who at least at the time were the favorites to win the championship. The idea of Fleta having actual help was a terrifying thought, just knowing what he did by himself in Apex. There's literally a carry term named after this guy. The Fleta Overwatch League takeover felt like destiny, and just knowing how his career went, I'd say the fans certainly have not been disappointed. Even when Seoul weren't that great, he was a superstar player. He was a fan favorite, and the guy that could literally play anything. His flashy play captivated the league in its infancy. And as his relevance on the Dynasty depleted, he found ways to remain great. All he needed was a fresh start. He did enough to prove himself, so when the Shanghai Dragons came calling to the Dynasty's door and he got traded there, he cashed in on his desire to truly be great. Immediately, with him leading the way, the Dragons became the best they ever were, and he himself established a first ballot Hall of Fame career. The man won MVP in 2020, literally becoming the meta, and eventually he'd win a championship the following year. And throughout the entire process, he refined his game and he deepened his hero pool even further. The same things he was always known for since his early Apex days became a mirror image in the league, and the fact that he pulled all these achievements off and played in the league for so long justifies him as one of the greatest success stories in the game's history. Number 4. Leave. Leave is the second Chinese prospect to make the list, and his hype was arguably twice as great as Guxue's. Add on everything that I said about Guxue, but with even greater feats, and you have perhaps the biggest prospect to walk out of China. Leave dominated the World Cup and the Chinese competitive scene for years, but because of his age, he pretty much had to wait as a league-ready player for 2+ years. And throughout this entire time period of the so-called Leave waiting room, people were saying that he might actually be the best player in the world. So when he finally got to play for Chengdu, people were ready for him to put Chinese Overwatch on the map for real. And in 2021, that potential definitely came to the surface. Chengdu ended up being one of the best teams in the league, and that's saying something because their roster on paper really wasn't that special. There were a couple of high potential pieces and some veterans, but the real reason they were so good is because of Leave deadlifting on the regular. Leave's 2021 campaign is one of the greatest individual seasons in Overwatch history. He led the league in final blows per 10, he had over 1,600 on the year total, and he had over half the league's Fleta deadlifts while being a god tier tracer, plus a couple of other heroes as well. Words alone can't emphasize just how important he was for the Overwatch League and for Chengdu's success. They almost solely relied on him to have a good game every single day to win. The final result was the second best record in APAC, 3 tournament appearances, and a playoff win. And keep in mind, the rest of Chengdu was full of okay players, and a lot of the time gimmick comps that nobody else in the league dared to play. That's how much of a difference Leave made. It took him playing good every single game, which he mostly did to make Chengdu a threat. Overwatch is a team game. It's not often where one guy by himself can raise your potential that much. There's only a small number of other instances throughout the league's history where you can find this. What Leave did in 2021 is special and more than helped him live up to his big-time hype. And now he's only building upon his legacy even further with a decently lengthy career where he's still one of the best to this day. Starting off the top 3 is Sparkle. Sparkle is one of the best examples out there. Unlike other people on this list, Sparkle showed results instantly and overtime, and his hype was some of the most intense we've ever seen. The Sparkle talks during the 2019 offseason / the beginning of 2020 was absurd, as he was showing dominant showcase after dominant showcase for Element Mystic and the Gauntlet, and practically had scouts salivating in the mouth over his explosiveness. Sparkle had bidding wars ensue. He was the clear-cut #1 free agent, and at the time he was a prodigy. The things he was doing on Element Mystic had everybody thinking that he was bound to be the next big thing. There was an all-in effort to make this guy everybody's franchise centerpiece, and Paris were the lucky winners. 2020 was the year of Sparkle. Within 1 month of turning 18 and being league eligible, Paris won the Summer Showdown. That is immediate impact. This man couldn't play for the first 2 months. He couldn't be with his team. He couldn't build up proper synergy. And there was only more time for himself to sit there and wonder if things could maybe go wrong. But there he was, joining the league late, as a rookie, being the best Genji in the league. Literally within 1 month of being on stage, they upset the Shock and the Fusion in one tournament. That game-winning blade against the Shock on Oasis is exactly what people envisioned him doing, and that's exactly why people had such high hopes. And then with the Fusion game, it's the same thing. He was a part of that successful 7-game series that might be the best match of all time. And for a while after these events, Paris were the most dominant team in the league. And that's just the short-term success, right? When he went to Dallas, his success story only continued. In 21, he was the Final Blows leader, an elite tracer and echo player, and somebody flexible enough to make up for Dallas's lack of a hit scan. And let's not forget the MVP nomination, the damage roll star, and helping Dallas bring home their first ever title. He continued exactly where he left off in his rookie year for a completely different franchise with just as good, if not even better results. And in 2022, that dream of being a life-changing player that would bring home a championship finally came true. He was locked in for the entirety of the playoffs and was one of the Fuel's most reliable playmakers. And again, he was part of one of the best games that has ever been played in League history. Arguably the 2 best games ever he was a part of. Even 2 years removed from his rookie year, Sparkle was still one of the best. He delivered on all the promises that people had back in 2020. Every good thing that people had to say about him as a prospect came true, and that, my friends, is a rare find, especially with all of the pressure on him. Speaking of rare finds, number 2 is Alarm. When he was still with us, Alarm had perhaps one of the best careers ever, and he did so with absurd expectations on his shoulders, and said expectations were placed on him at a very early age, and he had to deal with them and bear them for a lot longer than basically everybody else on this list. At the peak of Fusion University's dominance, a young Alarm caught everybody's attention on a daily basis thanks to some absurd Zenyatta play that was comparable to a prime Jonak. People thought of Alarm literally as a mini Jonak, so to speak. The way he constantly flashed brilliance had people practically begging for him to join the league. He was very obviously league ready all the way back in the inaugural season, but pretty much had no choice but to wait since he was not 18 years old. Needless to say, this started a narrative that the league would be in huge trouble the moment that he was ready to play. When you're already being considered one of the best supports in the world and being compared to Jonak before you're even on stage, it goes to show you that you have a lot to prove. And, well, Alarm was certainly ready for the challenge. It's like he didn't even feel the pressure. When Alarm joined the Fusion, they transformed into a bona fide contender truly for the first time ever. He carried so hard that he practically revived Sato's career. Despite joining a league with Violet, Twilight, Jonak, and so many others, Alarm more than held his own. As an 18-year-old, he was arguably the best player in the game. A top-tier Ana, a good Zen, an insane Baptiste, all at the same time. He fragged with Carpe on the regular. There was rarely an off day for this guy. The intelligence, the decision-making, always hitting the big cooldowns at the right time. He played perfectly. and his efforts had Philly be one of the best teams. It was like a night and day difference compared to when they were rocking with Boombox. They made the Final Four of the playoffs. They were in every tournament. They went 24-2 in the regular season. The Fusion had never been that consistent before, and they never have been ever since. Alarm transformed them, and his dominance didn't go unnoticed with a well-deserved Rookie of the Year, Roll-Star Award, and MVP nomination. That's right. As a rookie, he was already in the most valuable player talks. And while Philly were a bit worse the following year, he still made a major difference in making a playoff push for them and once again putting up some of the best numbers of any support. Alarm's career may have been cut short with his sudden passing, but in just 2 years in the league, he strung together one of the best careers ever while fully going above and beyond. And finally, the number 1 spot belongs to none other than Proper. His career is still very young, relatively speaking, but his rookie campaign is genuinely in a class of its own. Proper perhaps had the highest expectations of any rookie to ever play the game. The hype circulating around him thanks to his O2 Blast days had people thinking that he'd actually be the best player in the league literally right from the start. That was the day one expectation. As an 18-year-old kid, he was supposed to put the Shock back on the map. And it's not like this is early Overwatch League. This was 2022. The league had progressed a long way. The skill level was higher than it's ever been. That's the kind of gravity that came with his name. And what's crazy is, Proper somehow blew away those expectations. He didn't just dominate. He became the face of the league. As a rookie, he was the best player and quite possibly the most transcendent talent to ever grace the game. We can't use these terms lightly either. He was who everybody was talking about. The media, the fans, his peers. Proper was a different level of good, and he did so no matter what the meta pick was. Tracer, Genji, Sojourn, God tier on all of them. No matter what he had to play, he was standing above the rest of the pack. The man was the league leader in every damage metric, with the highest ever recorded final blow to death ratio as a starter of a franchise, as well as the first person to ever crack 2,000 final blows. He was the best player in the league, and by a good margin. And for his efforts, he pulled off even more history as the first person to win Roll-Star, Rookie of the Year, and MVP in the same year. And when the playoffs came around, with fans watching him under all that pressure, he continued to be brilliant. This playoff run might be one of the most dominant individual stretches we've ever laid eyes on. Every single game, it was like boom, boom, boom on the Sojourn. This man was mere fights away from carrying the Shock to a Grand Finals trophy as the underdog as an 18-year-old. He almost pulled off another crazy accomplishment when he pretty much shattered every record already. It's amazing, man. It really is. People said Proper would pound right from the start, and it's safe to say that he certainly has. It may be just one season to look back on, but the fact that he did even more than expected as possibly the most anticipated rookie ever is way too impressive to ignore. The magnitude of this individual performance is unmatched from a historical standpoint, which is why he most definitely deserves number 1 on this list. And that's my top 10 OWL players that lived up to the hype. Some of these entries are highly up for debate, I understand that, so let me know what you changed down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, it would mean a lot to me if you could hit the like button and subscribe if you want more Overwatch League content. And until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.